Hi everyone, I think it is time that we got started. The purpose of this webinar is to kind of go over Open Spatial products. We're not going to cover everything, we're not going to go and explain every product, but we are going to pick out a bunch of different features. Going through the introduction, openspatial.com, that's for Open Spatial, covers everything, but ACDC also has its own website, asconstructed.com. I'll have a link at the end of the presentation on those too. But we are using the membership on openspatial.com. You can click to get a login, you'll get blog information, etc. This is our agenda in case you missed that, but you can see the sorts of topics we're going to cover. And by way of introduction, I'm not going to cover everything on all the products. It's really a focus on the most recent stuff and also tips and tricks that people may or may not know about and run through some examples. So that being said, we'll start looking at ACDC. So if you're not familiar with this product, I'll use just one slide to give an overview. So what ACDC is about is as constructed design or drawing certification. That's what the acronym stands for. It's really about taking as-built or as constructed drawings and getting that data from the actual CAD drawing as digital data directly into GIS with all of the attributes and to validate those. So starts out with the CAD side. So the actual platform, our platform ACDC, enables you to build the tools that you would need to give to the CAD folks for how to support attributes and checking and building out connected networks that are attributed and topologically correct, etc. And that's really what we're going with ACDC. So if you're familiar with our Munsys product, this is really a subset of Munsys, but focused on the drawing creation so they can pull it straight into GIS, but it outputs data into any GIS. So that's sort of where we go. So we change the CAD side of it. We add in with ACDC a whole validation procedure where we will literally go and look that you cannot, you can set rules for what gets validated. Things like a pipe diameter has to be specified, materials, diameters, any of that stuff has to be there. We go a little further, we look for isolated nodes. So if you're a Munsys user, this is normal. Obviously closed polygons, data types, domain values, all of that is checked. We also can batch project number and year or any information for that matter across all the assets. And so that's what ACDC is really all about, is taking this CAD drawing and validating it. If it fails any of those checks, it actually flags where the errors are, what the errors are, and provides it back to the user with like circles on specific layers, error layers in the drawing that we've added. We don't modify any of the user's data. We just show where those errors are and give you the text to say this is what you need to fix. Like it's mandatory to have number of turns on a valve, for example, if that's what you'd configured. So it's a configurable system. This picture here is a user's dashboard online. So ACDC is both desktop and in the portal. And it essentially is the same functions that run either behind the scenes or on your desktop. This is the portal and this is their login. They've submitted 35 drawings that have failed, 15 that have passed. That's kind of normal, a 1-to-3 ratio, but you'll notice it literally only takes a few minutes to go check those drawings. So if you're interested in ACDC, I'm not going to give a whole demo. It takes kind of, 30 minutes to 45 minutes to go through it. But point being, you can go from CAD all the way to GIS. In the portal, there's a notification framework. So you can say when something's ready or validated. You can automate emails through the systems to different folks at different stages in the system. But literally, CAD here, GIS here with all of their attributes, and we're applying basically the rules-based logic from Munsys across all of the utilities. And for the US, we've built out a national CAD standard-based GIS and templates that are already functional from day one that include all of the CAD standard boilerplates, etc., but using national CAD standard. And then on the data side, essentially it's a full extension of the Munsys data schemas, but we've added in things like natural gas, all the civil stuff, telecom, and then obviously all the wet utilities, water, sewer, storm. It also does cadastral and all the parcels. If one of the outputs from ACDC, you can put it straight into GIS. You can also publish it straight into digital twin. In Australia, they have a national digital twin available, and you can literally put your own data straight into it, and that's what this example is. So that's ACDC, going from CAD to GIS with all the validation, but it's a full solution for the entire workflow for a complete digital submission and acceptance and validation. But the bottom line is every last piece of data you get has now been checked against, I don't know, typically around 40 or 50 different validation sets. We'll run into the details. So ACDC, start to finish from as constructed documents or record plans to GIS and or digital twins. In ACDC, the last few years in the portal, this is what you get if you submit a drawing that has failed. You get very simple basic checks that we were doing, which would be, all of the things like missing values, data types, domain values, etc. What we've done with ACDC 5, which has been released, is we've extended those to include compound validations. I'll run through some of those. But in your reporting on the desktop, you can see, this sort of stuff. How many entities were validated? Sometimes in the drawing, it ran through this one, for example. This is a small drawing, had 110 and only 55 actually had a configuration to be checked. And of those, 53 passed and 2 failed, and they were attribute errors and spatial errors. So that would be something like the pipe's missing information on diameter or material, or it's not snapped, or it's isolated would be the spatial error, or it's outside the extents of the project and that sort of thing. What we've done now is extended it out with compound validations. And so those are the error types. You can also, when you upload a drawing, you can download the one, the original or the failed drawing, and then you can resubmit. So that's sort of how that works. And we give you, when you download the failed drawing, you literally do get a list of the errors, but you get actual markers in the drawing. Very useful to zip through. What we've added is compound validations and warnings in ACDC 5. So compound validations allow you to configure additional attribute and spatial, or a combination of attribute and spatial rules that deal with things like comparisons, ranges, limits, multi-value lists. And I'll run through each of these, but they're grouped into just attribute, spatial, or spatial and attribute. And so this becomes really kind of useful. Way too much detail. So on attribute, I'll run through just a few things. There's things like you can start dealing with substrings. You can do a multi-comparative check where one feature compares to another feature. So for example, on a gravity main, you can look at the invert level of the upstream manhole versus the downstream one and check that those two values are consistent with the direction of flow. So you're comparing the line with the each 2 nodes on either end, that sort of stuff. For storm here on the multi-check, you can look at if something is beyond a particular value, like in this case, the depth of a storm capture structure, then you need to apply an additional rule to say, well, then you need to check that the number of rungs are also entered for something that's deeper than whatever you've specified. So these are the generic check types. They apply across the range to a whole lot of different things. There's obviously just value checks, greater than, equal to, but you can take that and combine it with the other checks so that you're getting a combination of those. So that's just on attributes. If we look at spatial, you can look at containment. So for example, you can't have let's pick something that's not a utility. Well, this one here is a road center line must be captured within a segmented area of road, or you can't have a children's slide or playground equipment that is not contained within a playground. So just containments. Link limits are about the number of links from a given node. So any node, like if it's a reducer, you can say, there can only be 2 pipes touching a reducer. But if it's a T, there could be 3, and so it goes. So that's link limits, and then node limits. So node limits is how many nodes can be on a pipe, and it can be a minimum or a maximum. So for example, on a pipe, and you want to know that there's always some node on either end of a pipe, you could say the minimum is 2. And so it could be, that's there, or the maximum is 2 and the minimum is 1, that sort of thing. You can specify those. And you can combine these then. So you can look at a related attribute. So where one feature checks something against another feature. So the diameter of a fitting must match the diameter of the pipe that's touching it. So basically you've got the right asset information there. Or you can look at a check here where one object can be inside or crossing another object. And then this one, the distance check, actually covers a huge number of things because it deals with within, minimum, and maximum. And so this is where you can say, well, on the road side, if you've got a road polygon, it needs a property of a name, but there could be a name text that could be within that polygon, and those 2 names need to match so there's not a typo. Or you can do other things along the lines of, if you've got a given pipe type, or so certain node type, like if you have a electric transformer, that cannot be within 6 feet of any kind of wet pipe, or it can't be within 6 feet of a water valve or water connection point. So looking at distances, minimum, maximums, and within. So fairly powerful stuff. And so if you look at a few examples, you combine these. So for example, let's take this one. So a pipe material RC or RC1 can then only have a diameter of these values. So it's a subset of the available diameters for all pipes based on the material, then has essentially a dependent listing of what then becomes available. And there's a lot of those. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can apply the equal, not equal, greater than, less than, greater than, equal, etc. logic across the board to any given thing. So you've got a couple of things in this dialog actually. So these are essentially the multi-checks I've described already. So if the width is this, then it can't have another value of greater than whatever it is. But if you look on the left, you can set, also we've introduced this warnings thing. So on a compound validation, if it fails, then you can just call it an error and flat out not be okay with that. Or you can set it as a warning being we wanted it to match where, you know, if you've got this material, it must have this type of diameter. But maybe you didn't have everything specified in your thing and you just want to warn that. So you want to know it's inconsistent with what you've defined. However, you're going to let it pass. So warnings allow that. And so within compound validations, you get errors or warnings. And the warnings is also a gray area. It kind of is useful because it's sort of if you really kind of would like that information, but you're not going to fail the drawing if you don't have it. So there's also kind of reporting. So if you look at the updated version now, we've added the compound validations in the middle. And so you can get things that are passed with warnings. And actually, I can show you live. So here's a few drawings. So a drawing could be certified or it could be certified with warnings. It would actually list it there. But if you go and let's just pop, so I've opened up a few. So this would be the old version where it didn't do any compound validations in this particular setter config. But in this configuration, there's all of the entities passed, but with a compound validation check. So that would be our standard checks, but with compound checks, some passed, some failed, and we failed in that perspective. So just looking at that, you can see there we're checking for attribute errors, break errors, spatial errors. We list them all out. So this drawing effectively has failed on some of those. On any given drawing, you can also go in and check, you know, when it was uploaded, who uploaded it, has it been downloaded again? And so you see the validation data file has been downloaded. So this person, oh, it was me, uploaded that and then dropped it down. This is the actual portal itself in ACDC. So each user has a dashboard. They can go to a project. When you log in, you get your dashboard. So for this dashboard, there's documents available for that project. So I would download the details. I'd download the template, which would have the min-max boundaries, all the blocks, all the layers, and then I'd get to draw, and then I could submit that drawing and validate it. And if I was an admin, I could define projects, etc. So moving on, that's ACDC. We also do provide a summary of what was put forward. So in that listing, if you go and look, according to your asset classes in the definition, you can look how many entities there were and get some stats on that. And then also categories of data that is in your standard, but was not found in the drawing and that sort of stuff. So useful thing. So there's that summary. We've also on ACDC on the desktop itself, produced a set of tools to make it easy to create that, what we call the toolkit. And the toolkit is a CAD drawing with a template and even with menus. And so the template includes, if I go to the CAD drawing, it has the min-max boundaries, it has a coordinate system assigned, it has all the layers, all the blocks, and we also then provide a menu. And we used to build those out to standard AutoCAD menus, but when you've got so many features, it's a big, big challenge. So what we've done in the configuration for ACDC in the configurator is we've added a whole set of things. So what we want to do is put those on the menu and to make it easy. So to get a menu like this, so this is the Australian standard. We support any custom standard, but in Australia, there are a few recognized by the government and are need to be used. And in the US, we've just got an off-the-shelf standard that we built out, essentially an extension of the Munsys data standards. But this menu here is useful because by clicking on that, when a person is trying to draw a drawing that complies with a given ACDC configuration, using the menu automatically gets them the right block name, gets them the right layer, and it just makes it hugely easy for them to then build drawings consistently that are going to be able to be validated. So in the configurator, so this is what it looks like. You'll see a whole new set of icons in there. which allows you to go and define menu groups, and within those groups, actual functions. And then in the functions, it's already picking out from the definition in ACDC what the layer name should be, what the block name should be, etc. And so you can go in here and define these, add them. You can edit that configuration, move things up and down, etc. You can then even go and do a preview. What's it going to look like? So I'm pulling out drainage. This is what I've got here. And what we do is we create a simple text file output. And the reason we do that is it's generic. It goes across many products. Also, the stuff that we're doing is that whole attributor with drop-downs, and you can build that out. So if you look at it, when you build a menu, you actually need probably a number of different menus that are slightly different. So same menu, different function call. For example, if someone only has AutoCAD, they cannot run any application like attributor. So the block insert on that menu would be the AutoCAD command, just insert for a block. If they're running, that's on LT, if they're running AutoCAD and they're using our attributor plugin, and once again, you can say take that on a different webinar, but it allows for drop downs essentially on block attributes. And so it's a similar command to the block insert, except it's OS insert. And so in the menu, you need to have that scripted. So if it goes across multiple features like that, a bit of a pain to go and edit all of that. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So for the map 3D also, and by extension then Civil 3D with the map part within it, supports M polygons, so the menu can then have additional functions. We also support BricsCAD in ACDC, and so once again, attribute or no attribute, depending on your version there. So that's menu generation, a big deal. So that's ACDC. If you're interested in ACDC, if you go to asconstructed.com, where I was just a minute ago, here, if you just go to asconstructed.com, you'll get to a web page that'll look like this. So this is asconstructed.com. And where I was is there's a portal login there. So for each organization, we set up literally their own portal for that organization. So that is password protected and set up and run by the asset owners or that city or county or whatever it is. But in here, you can find out more about ACDC. You can go look at it. You can set up a meeting if you want more info. You can look at how it works. There's, regular website stuff you can download, brochures, case studies, and that sort of thing. So moving on to Munsys. AutoCAD 2024 versions have just been released last week. And we are already with Munsys. We've been doing QA on beta versions for a while already. So Munsys 14.3 is going to be going out within a matter of days and will run on AutoCAD 2023 and 2024. So that's available. And so what I'll show you is a couple of things that we've added in there. I'll run through each of these. So here it is. It looks the same. One thing we've done is actually build out login profiles. This is only useful for folks that use more than one schema. So some organizations will have a test, a dev, and a production schema. And so what we've done is just make it easy. So when you hit the connect icon, there's a login profile, and you can go and configure that so that it saves all of these settings. So it's easy to switch between one setup and another. And some places don't need it, so that's fine. So I'll just zip right along. But basically, you can put that in and it'll save, what the username is, the schema name, and the database. It allows for 3 profiles to be set up. And so you can go in, if I choose profile 2, it just changes what the schema name, etc. is. And this is useful because sometimes you may have QA or test on a different server. You can then go in and you can actually, to set up these things, they are driven by the registry. And this is documented, it's in the user guide. You would have to actually go to the Munsys 14.3 logons key within the registry and just go and change this. So if you wanted to rename it and you didn't want it to have a description of logon 1, you can modify it here and go put the actual data to what you want. So the schema, typically what you'd put is the schema name. And then once you've saved that, that's actually immediately available. So I can just change 2 of them. So www.prod and then mcity. And the moment you come in here now, if you go and hit the connect database, you'll see those values are available right there. The other thing you might have noticed, and I mentioned it, was we've added one new function for GSC. This is actually direct from user feedback, and that is to create a GSC from your current screen extents. So typically folks will zoom to where they're interested and they say, this is my area of interest. Let me just create the GSC. So before you would have had to check the settings, go click on this icon and then drag a window. Now you can just hit this button and go from there. And what we found is actually there was a slight inconsistency, and this may be confusing, so I'm going to point it out. We use the red color for create and the blue color for the zooms or shows. Just generally, however, in the past, this icon with the diamond that's now blue, used to be red, zoom database extents. So it was in the red ones, but it really was not a create. So we've kept the icon the same. So think that sort of diamond for the database extents, but you're going to find it under the zoom show sections as opposed to the create section. So just a little heads up, that's one minor change in 14.3. Another thing we've done is added in 14.3 the toolbar. So no new functions, just making it easy, because if you ever wanted to change tag, you literally had to go to the Munsys object menu, change tag, and then pick one of these. So these are the same. All we've done is add icons to them and then put them on a toolbar. So if you wanted to change any Munsys tag associated with a feature, this was a serious pain. And so we've added that, and hopefully you'll like that very much. And so this is there as an icon toolbar, and it's the same function, so position, etc. To activate it with standard AutoCAD stuff, go where there is an icon ribbon already, find a gray space, hit right mouse button. And in Munsys 14.3, you're going to find that the Munsys change tag is listed as part of AutoCAD. It's going to be there. You just got to toggle it on, and then you can move it around like any other toolbar and dock it or stick it wherever and set up your workspaces and do all of that stuff. So it is documented in the documentation 14.3, so you'll find it all there too. But that one we think actually saves 3 clicks to 1 click on a toolbar, and we think that some people will really like that. So now I'm going to move on a little bit. This actually is Enlighten, not Munsys, but I'm going to show you something that bridges over between Munsys and Enlighten. What we've done, generally our customers have 2.5D data, 2 3/4D maybe if you go. Well, you could call it 3, but it's not the traditional 3x, y, z. It's you got the z values will typically be as an attribute, and the other dimension may be time. So, you know, I don't know if it's 2.5 or 2 3/4 or whatever it is. But fact is, so that industry is moving into 3D, but you have all this data that's 2.5, 2 3/4D. So I'm just going to show you a couple of examples, and this bridges over between Munsys and Enlighten. So most of you would know that in Enlighten, and in fact in Munsys, you can do a trace. So that pipe breaks, do a trace, shut these valves, these parcels end up with no water. That's fine. So let's do that same thing in Enlighten. So I'll just show you live here. So I'll let it run. This, where that arrow is, we're going to select that pipe, run the trace. Those are the parcels impacted. But what we're going to do now, and this is what we spent a fair amount of time on in Munsys 14.3, is we've added the export as a CZML file, kind of like we did with a KML file. But CZML file is 3D. So what that function does, that export does, is you can configure specific columns for the width of an item. So for pipes, it's easy. It's usually diameter. For manholes, it's going to be, you know, diameter, and then depth, the height of that, and then the shape. So you can specify in any file what columns to use to essentially bloat out the 2.5D data into full 3D. And yes, we'll do all of the vertices and a start and end invert. So for the gravity pipes, typically those are just straight lines. But if it's actually a 3D line, we would then support that. And we've done that as a generic function that can get used in both Munsys and Enlighten. So I'm just showing you here. Let's go and move on and show the same thing, same data, but exported as CZML. In Munsys 14.3, you'll see there's a new command put in right next to the Google Earth KML, CZML, and that's basically an open standard for the Cesium project and is used by a lot of digital twin kind of 3D display products. So you can run that same data into the Unreal Engine. You can run that same output into Terria. You can put, if you're in Australia, the Australian National Digital Twin, or any of the states one like Digital Twin Victoria or New South Wales, that you can put it straight into those. But what you're going to do is take your standard Munsys data from that export. If you load it up into one of those, this is actually Digital Twin Victoria. It's based on Terria, which is essentially a customized version done by the Australian research, the CSR, for the government, and they're providing that to the various states. But this is the interesting part. So Munsys here, these are actually displayed as per their diameters in Munsys. You can, in your any file, this is the storm, so it's specified the nodes as boxes, whereas in the sewer, we've done them as cylinders, and the size, the width, and the depth of that comes right out of the Munsys. The invert elevation's all accurate, etc. So you can literally go from your Munsys to there. It does expose, of course, if you're missing data. You're gonna have things popping to fall out of the world to a value 0, or if you have a 999, it's gonna put a big spike in your 3D data and stuff like that. But basically now, one command, click, select the stuff you want. It uses your config, outputs your data, and you can view it in a 3D viewing platform. So we've put a fair amount of work. Here's that same network trace, but taking those things in the digital twin Victoria, you can kind of see. So here's the Munsys data. So take that CZML, and pull it here. You can just load it up. They actually have some buildings as well. So often there's a whole more rich context that may or may not be available. So that's the sewer. The yellow pipe, there's the one we did the trace on. So when you do that trace in Enlighten, for example, or Munsys, you can select the output and create a CZML. So here, by the way, just showing the actual Munsys data. So it's carried all the way over, and you can use it there. But then if I go in on the left and turn on the network trace, I now get shown in a sort of a green color here, the 3D version of all of those assets, the pipes and manholes, and then also the parcels, and it's viewed in 3D. So you can kind of get it within that context. In an ACDC product, we can actually take the CAD drawing and use that same function to go from the CAD drawing and push it straight into the digital twin. So we'll take the CAD drawing, we'll validate it, we'll capture all of the attributes, we'll apply the rules, and if it passes, then you can output it and push it straight into a digital twin as well. So here's an example of some Munsys stuff. Automating the creation of laterals from CCTV data. We've actually done this probably on 3 or 4 different CCTV systems. Most of them have a database that they use as the asset IDs that they can put in the CCTV storage. So step one is we'll take the Munsys data and use that to populate the CCTV data set so that you have the same manhole number, the same pipe IDs, etc. And that way they can then get used back. So if you want to create laterals, then yeah, you need your CCTV data to know what ID that thing is in Munsys. At that point, the crew can go out and do their CCTV. They typically store 2 main tables. There's a bunch of other stuff, but 2 main things. There'll be an assessment, which will literally be what day is it, which crew, and from where to where, and was it upstream or downstream, and that sort of stuff. And then for that particular run, there are the details of what they found for it, the observations or records, if you will. Things like, 12 feet down, we found a crack, then further down, we found this, we found that, and they took a picture or did whatever, and they code that with their own software. But what we're doing in Munsys is reading from that database back to a set of tables that we create in the Munsys schema, just to contain what's been processed, what hasn't, and what's the link, so you can go back and forth between that and the CCTV data. Things like the pipe ID is used as the link, but we then want to know, well, what was the code? What was the clock position for anything, particularly laterals? We then actually in Munsys have a set of processes that will run on the CCTV data, and you want to do things like excluding surveys that were incomplete, excluding surveys where the length of the CCTV run was way different from what's in Munsys, because you're not going to be able to create a lateral if Munsys says the pipe is 200 feet long and the CCTV survey was only 60. Clearly they didn't go all the way down, and they might have had to stop and come from the other direction, all manner of things. But this process literally flags and checks those. Typically we build in, if it's a 3 or a 5% delta, we say it's good. If it's more than that, we say it's marginal, and then if it's beyond a certain limit, we just say no, it's not. And we flag them as accurate or not. We also track whether it's new, because as you build this data set, these steps 1 and 2, we already know which pipes have previously got a record associated with them, and you want to know if this is completely new and becomes the most recent survey, and whether you want to pull data out of that. And so this process is preparing for what you can then do in Munsys, which is then run a function which literally puts hairs on the pipe, is what I call it, but it will go in, look at, in Munsys, what you do is you pull in the sewer pipes, for example, and then you select the ones you want to run it on, run the function, it will go and look, do I have new CCTV available here that I want to then update laterals on those pipes? And all it does is put actual Munsys features, service connections on those pipes at the given place. It also flip-flops and looks at the distance and the clock position and just draws a set length of a service connection line from that location on the pipe. So it's looking at, well, what's the direction of the pipe and was the TV done in the same direction? And we'll put that there. And once it's created them, it'll put them at that given linear distance down the pipe, and we'll put it left or right based on clock position, and also go and look at what did they actually find on that. And so you can then go in, obviously in Munsys, it's just created them. You then can go look at it. You can run integrity check. you can do anything else you want with it and then post it to the database once you've done it. So all it does is just create it. And so there's some places we've created tens of thousands of these things from the CCTV data. And then once it's in Munsys, of course, you can view it in Enlighten. Pretty nice in Enlighten because A, it means everyone can see where the laterals are along the pipe. Also, you can start doing some stats. You can say, well, where's ones that haven't been CCTV'd in the last 5 years? So where are there data discrepancies, like with the lengths in the CCTV is always consistently different from Munsys? Well, maybe there's a problem there. So stuff like that. Last thing on Munsys, Geoscans. I don't know if you've seen this, but the geoscan is a term we just invented basically for georeferencing record plans and sticking them as backdrop within the map, basically. And so in Munsys, if you look at it, you can go in. It's a standard thing. It's been there quite a long time, since Munsys 11, actually. You go on the capture menu, you see all of those menu picks from insert image down to the second from bottom there. So let's insert, say, a PDF. You literally just go in. We can do DWGs, TIFFs, and or these. PDFs are useful because if it's a multi-page, you can see all the pages. So this one only has one page. And you literally go and specify on the screen. You can set the scale. I'm setting this one to 1, which probably not necessarily, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to go and reference it. So I've just placed this just any old way, just illustrating how it works. And let's zoom right in on that guy and go see what it looks like, and we can zoom in. So here's that plan. So this is that PDF as a page. And what we've done, and I've just drawn a line here, but what you want to do is georeference it. So this will then allow you to do essentially a line. So it says select the image, and then it'll say show me a point on the image. So if there's this image, so here I've just done it, doing it rough here, but often I'll draw a construction line. So if you zoom right in while you're doing this to say start, this point goes to that point, so you could zoom right in on a given spot. Sometimes draw a construction line to this asset, so this would be like the pipe, and when you click it, it'll do an align, and so which is essentially a scale and rotate, and park that into the right place, and now we're good. And this is nothing different than what you would do if you were doing an insert of an image in AutoCAD. However, in AutoCAD, you would then save that as an image that's been extracted into the drawing. And if you ever wanted to come back to this, or you ever want to look at it, so you're going to have to know what drawing it is, and you're going to have to come back, find that drawing, and that drawing will have to have the relative parts set up to where you want. And what we're going to do now is go and create a polygon in Munsys automatically. So on that function on the thing on the menu was create a geoscan boundary for this particular image. So that green thing now is a Munsys polygon, automatically created from the plan. So if I go and look at the info on it, so I'll just click on it, you'll see, and these are the geoscan table. It's pulled out of the drawing all of the scale, rotate. The image date, by the way, is when the thing happened to be scanned or saved. It's not actually when the project was, but we've got the path there and everything that we need to basically restore and display this thing again. So if you post that to your data set, you're now going to have a polygon there. And the polygon has a corresponding function in Munsys that knows all of those columns to look for, where you can literally restore it. So in this particular city, this is in Louisiana, we have a project here. We've been building out their water and sewer networks for them. We've probably processed more than 800 of these project plans to build out their stuff from nothing. And so I'm going in and pulling in all the geoscan boundaries. Every one of those little crazy things is one boundary. Like I just showed you, we did one, it's been geo-referenced. You can see the details of it, and it's in there. But once you have it in here, at any time in Munsys later on, you can go and say load that geoscan boundary. Okay, you can click on it. It'll then know where to go find it. You could do more than one at a time, and it'll pop it in as an underlay, and you can go do heads up digitizing, etc., or you can just look at it to find out what's going on. So this is nothing really new. This has been in Munsys for a while. It's very useful. You can also, by the way, on that capture menu, there's hyperlinks as well. So you could hyperlink that and pop the thing open and open it. So it's sort of a document management system. So I'm showing you all of that because we've duplicated this functionality. Once you create those boundaries in Munsys, but the putting it as an underlay and drilling down and displaying the plan, we've duplicated that in Enlighten so that it's a seamless process. I'll show you that when we get to the Enlighten section. So that's Geoscans. One slide on this, I'll just mention it. We have an integration with a product called Amigo Collect. It's from a company called Amigo Cloud. It's a very, very slick and powerful mobile GIS app for being in the field on phones and tablets. And it has really nice forms. And here the display, these things have been highlighted with weird yellow ghosted lines, because if somebody's validated in the field, once they've saved it, we know it's been changed. It'll actually change the color to white, and you can track which ones have been looked at. It does GPS support and a whole lot of things, and I'm not going to go into any more detail on that, except for we built this product called Munsys FieldSync, which allows you to take that data. First of all, you don't want to recreate all those forms by hand. We already know what columns you have in Munsys. So you can go into Munsys FieldSync and literally run this Munsys FieldSync from your Munsys database, and because we've got API, we can push that and go and create all those forms and all those layers and pull the Munsys data and push it up here and set an ID so that the ID of the field app is going to get tracked all the way back. And then the second part of Munsys FieldSync is you can set it to synchronize. So changes by any number of field users can get pushed back into Munsys or into a staging table, and we track who changed what, etc. So there's a whole lot of stuff, and then that can get used in Enlighten. So if they took a photo, for example, it's going to load it up here, pull it down, have it linked, and you're going to see it directly saying Enlighten. We're having a webinar on that in a couple of weeks. If you want to see how that works, join us for that. But the big part here is Munsys FieldSync does a great job of setting that up easily and then synchronizing that stuff back into Munsys directly or into a staging table directly. And it does the same. It's bi-directional. So in the meantime, if you've been editing Munsys data, when we do the sync, it'll push those changes back into the cloud. And then there's a conflict and error follow-ups to say, well, wait a minute, the field person modified it and the Munsys modified it. Which one do you want? That sort of stuff. All right, last section then. Let's zip along to Enlighten quickly. So Enlighten is our GeoPortal, a web-based tool. And here's a couple of examples. I'll just use the Geoscans as an example of a couple of things. So you should have in Enlighten now the floating toolbars, the transparency stuff, the ability to put OpenStreetMap and other backdrop values in there. And we're actually very excited about our upcoming version of Enlighten that's going to crank out the speed big time, which we know being a fully vector product, most of the modern web-based GISs are actually tiling their data, and it's not really vectors that you see, it's actually a tiled version of the vectors. So we're starting to use those open source standards and pulling that along, and that should make a big change. In the meantime, there's added functionality in there that we've built out. So I'll just zoom right in. Let's go and turn off, say, the parcels, and let's talk about those geoscans. So you'll see on the layers here, we've set up a bunch of geoscan boundaries. So that's the polygons that were captured in Munsys, the same way. So actually I should turn the parcels off. So let's go in and do that. And somewhere along here, the parcels will get turned off real quick. Yeah, they're turned off. So now we've turned on the small boundary. So one of the things with all of those little squares, it's kind of confusing as to which to select. So what we do is we prioritize them based on size. So the little ones on top and the bigger ones are below. That allows you to kind of do a click through. But you'll see all of now we start adding. And if I add the medium-sized ones, you'll see there's a few hundred of these things. But that's, just to show you there's a lot. Now, why would you do such a thing? By putting these actual plan pages in location, you can use the spatial capability. So if we zoomed in to a given little area and said, I want to know what plans are applicable, what plan pages actually are applicable to this given area. So let's just zoom in there. So in this given area, there's those plans, and say I go to a specific road intersection and I say, what plans are in that spot, right? So let's go there. All you have to do in Enlighten is you just drag a box right there, and it'll do, Enlighten by default does crossing, picks up all of those, hit the advanced form, and you'll see there's 5 plans in there. Now, one of the things you'll note in Enlighten now is we've added a little preview for the raster images. So when you set up the form, you can actually say on this column, it's a hyperlink and a preview. You can also click the link windows button, which what's going to happen if it'll link it, it'll automatically open it. And as you go to each different row, it'll automatically just update that window in your browser. So if I just go back, say I go to this one and I click on the row below, and it also has an image, it'll pop that guy up. So you can literally walk through each of these plans, kind of useful stuff. So that's part 1 to show you. Let's uncheck that. And what I'm going to do now is zoom to a slightly different area. And so bookmarks, by the way, it's this icon fourth from the left. You can set up private or public. I've set up a private bookmark for this demo example. So there's a Geoscan. I can turn on the parcels and a few other things to get some context. That boundary there, we've literally got that. You can select it in Enlighten, but once you select it, you can actually then go and load the Geoscan. This will put that underlay. The same thing you were seeing in Munsys, you're seeing that image. Of course, we've done a fair amount of trickery in the background because that was a PDF. So what we've had to do to get it here is we've literally padded it, we've re-rendered it so that it matches at that angle and it comes up behind the scenes there. And so we've built out that functionality now so that you can go from one to the other. So now you can use this for heads-up digitizing, and you can toggle it on and off very easily. As you zoom in, you get to see that particular image there, and so it's loading it in its detailed view. So now, pretty cool, you've got this. So we've used it obviously as heads-up digitizing, but you'll note there's so much more information on these things, you know, what they did and etc. It also, you'll notice it's added it automatically as a little layer at the bottom left there. You can toggle that guy on and off just by turning the layer off, and then the Geoscan goes away. It automatically figures out priority of drawing so that it puts it at the top part of any raster backdrop like OpenStreetMap, but underneath any of the vectors. So that's how we get it under those. Moving on, last thing, Tooltips and Enlighten. So you'll see here, this is a fairly simple tooltip, but it has a click to go straight into Street View. We do that in most places. I just mention it because it's sort of free and it's kind of useful. All it's doing is taking a lat long. So in Munsys, you can actually set up that the lat longs are automatically, based on a trigger, automatically populate given column within your features. So it just makes it easy. But there's that hydrant. And so just to show, you know, that in a tooltip. I said we'd talk back the CCTV data. Yeah, this particular city has over 10,000 laterals created here. So let's just take a look at how that manifests for the Enlighten users as opposed to the Munsys users. So for Munsys, I showed you, we use that as the workhorse for creating those. And then we go in here. So this is all the red is sewer. The orange is owned by a slightly different group, different jurisdiction. So one of the things you may note in Enlighten is you can go in and actually just type a scale and then hit enter. So I can go from that, you know, 20,000 down to 4,000 like that. The symbol is always interesting looking at different people's maps. So these folks have slightly different ones. Tooltips, if I move that mouse on there, you'll see pretty standard tooltips. But let's zoom in a little tighter and pull it up here. So as we zoom in now, you'll see the laterals start appearing. You see the tooltip there, by the way, a very simple tooltip. So let's select. You know that if you hold the shift key, you can select more than one right there. So there's that tooltip. I'll come back to that in a minute. For the CCTV data, it's linked with using it through the advanced forms. And so if you hold shift, you can do multiple different ones, or if you drag a box, you can do different pipes. So let me zoom right along here. Get this guy. So I hit the advanced form on that single pipe and I get this here. And so let's just walk it through. You know that you can set particular columns for editing on the form. So if you look down below, so I just have the one pipe selected. So that's the list view where the yellow is. And then down below is the detailed view. And here we can go back to that record plan. So this is a PDF. So this does support multi-page PDFs. So if you set that up in Munsys, it's going to pick it up in Enlighten. It's going to know how to get to that page. And so you've kind of seen this already. So I think I can move along, but it's the same preview and you can do the full window, etc., and view that guy and take a look at it. So let's close that and move on. One thing about lineage, for example, so this tab here in Enlighten is actually showing that this pipe has a history, lineage, Munsys lineage, records 4 changes. If you see a 1 in 4 like that, there's a way to drill down. If you hit that little, you see that you can use the left and right, and that'll toggle between the 4 records, or you can go on the right-hand side and hit this icon here, which will push those 4 records and update, drill down into the list view. So on the left, that little panel is the original pipe. And then where the yellow line is, those 4 records are the 4 linked records. So this is in the lineage table. And these were changes that were made. And you can then go into each one. You can look at what's done in 2020 and then a couple of times in 2021. Looks like the person edited like 3 different things. Actually, no, there was the different dates there. So we've got different stuff there. So you can go in and look at it and drill down and check. So down here in the detailed view, it actually gives you more information of that particular edit and what the values were at that given time. So it's literally pulling that out of lineage, which is essentially a history of every transaction done on that pipe, including moves or edits. All right, so let's go back then to CCTV. I'm going to just select a couple of pipes here, and then we're going to go look at the CCTV data on that for us to take a good look at. And actually, I think we'll probably just do one pipe. Yeah, so I selected just the one pipe in a node, and you can do the editing. These are the Munsys drop-down, so Enlighten automatically picks those up. And so here in gravity pipes, I can go click on one. Let's go and we can do any one or three of them. You know that you can edit multiple in Enlighten, so you'll see there's no icon there, but if I check 2 rows, I get this little icon there and it says toggle to save multiple records. So if I click that icon, it now down below changes the save icon, but you'll see it says vary. So this is now going to make a change to both or anything that was selected. So in this case, those 2 rows. So if I put in any there, and then I hit the save multiple on the right there, it would save that and this would be applied. I don't actually want to put that on these 2, so I'm going to bail out of that. You can turn off the edit multiple, the top right, turning that little icon. If you click it back, it goes to edit single. So that guy, if you click that, it'll toggle back to just the single thing like there. So just a subtlety of that editing, but we found that people want to edit multiple, so that's kind of useful. So back then to the final part. So as I zoom in, you'll see that that's the pipe. You'll see the direction of the pipe. So from that manhole to the manhole down in the end, there's a direction arrow right in the middle that says it goes from the bottom of the screen up to the top. And then if you look at each of the laterals, there's the footage. So there's the direction arrow. And then if you look at the laterals, there's 28 feet, there's a lateral, then there's 30, and it says it's from there, and it gives you the distance, so the tooltip is useful. 66, and so sometimes you can't always, 110, there's 2 there, you can't display them. But this is automatically being created, the position of and rotation of the text that goes with on the footage, the laterals. On this particular pipe, they're all on the left. They could be left and right. We look at the clock position, we look at the direction, so we know if it's 3 o'clock, you're going to get something different than if it's 9 o'clock. It's going to go left or right. And if it's actually at noon, pointing straight up, we've put a shorter line there and we just put it on one side. So I haven't set up necessarily a dedicated form for the laterals, but if you go to the gravity pipes, we can start looking at the TV data. So we looked at record plans. We're not interested in that. Move along. Let's go and look at laterals. So here we go and look at the laterals. So remember, there's assessment. So this is like the metadata. I click on that. It's going to give me information on it's done on this day. So there's an inspection date. The process is where we've actually run that process to say, yes, this thing has got laterals and hasn't been done yet, so we need to do it. The direction, so there's its internal ID. It's all linked on pipe ID, and we carry over the CCTV. They're using GUID, so those funny long numbers. It's downstream. Length was 274. And that's basically it. We don't store too much more, and the process is then a value that you can go change in and say Munsys. So for this given run that was done on, 6th of January 2021, there were 13 observations, and each one's going to have a code and it's going to have a footage. So once again, this becomes really useful to be able to drill down and show all 13 of them. So I use this list view there to drill down into the linked table. And now you'll see that the top here, it's got the linked table. And what I want to do is sort. So the other thing you may know about Enlighten, if you click on a column within the form, it sorts on it. So what I've done now is sort by footage. So we can start at the beginning. There's the stuff 3.7, 4.9, etc. And the columns on the left here, there's the actual code from, and we support actually 2 different forms. The code of 15 is a different setup than the one that's got the wording laterals, but we really were interested in the laterals. And then you'll see the ops clocked there for the clock position. And so these were taken then, and just literally this was automatically created as geometry and sorted in terms of length, layout, fonts, etc. Sorry, the footage, text, etc. into 2 different features within Munsys and hence Enlighten. So just a good example on how you can do it. So moving along, once you have these pipes, if we look at, say, the legend here, if I go to sewer legend, you'll see that there's sewer pipes year to date. So first, the pipes currently are coded according to the type. So private, abandoned, interceptor. So those are the colors. But let's actually go and look then at sewer pipes year to date. So this just shows it's going to color them according to when they were last done. So this is dynamic. It's picking up the most recent CCTV on that pipe, looking at the date, and it's how many months from the current date. And so year to date, we've got it's within a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years or more. And so in this particular city, they have a moratorium. Every pipe has to be CCTV'd once in 5 years. And so that's very important to say which ones have not been done and which ones we actually have nothing. So if you look at the funny colors now, you'll see that the tooltip gives us, just to help you, so you don't have to look backwards and forwards, but that's like 20 years or 2 years, well, just slightly less than 2 years. So the different colors, and then that funny yellow line highlights ones that have not been done. So that section there, that's a problem. You need to highlight that. And so this becomes useful for people to look at. So kind of an interesting way to deal with that. Let's see what else was there in here. Yeah, if we zoom right in, you can see the left and rights on these and the footages up and down and on all of that. So very useful. All right, moving along. Last part then, tooltips. There's a lot to tooltips. A tooltip is actually essentially a little bit of HTML-ish, not quite HTML, because it also incorporates the ability to read data for that given ID of the feature from specific tables, and there's various functions you can do on the tables, but it's HTML-ish. So you can do the basic tooltips like these, where you're just putting a new line for each thing, or some things concatenate together, and you can put breaks and new lines. So those are simple tooltips, but really powerful. And as you saw before, as you move your mouse around, it pops them up. You can get a little more, put in a little bit of a CSS if you want, and a little bit more HTML, and you can go and color and bold and start tabbing things. Like here, simple one, they've just put a bolder font specification at the top. Or you can go a little further, where you can put in an image and you can start using hyperlinks within that. And then if you're using the Amigo Cloud and Munsys Field Sync, here's data that was captured in the field, number of turns as they were exercising the valve, and here's a photo which automatically then creates the thumbnail and the drill down picture for it. So just in these tooltips, very, very powerful interactive way of producing information on the map. Here's another set of tooltips. Let's start on this crazy colored one on the left. It's a thematic map of water consumption for given parcels, and then looking at their consumption over time. In the tooltip, you can actually get charts pushed straight into that, and they'll read from the specified column ranges to give you that. So it's another, it's a very powerful thing. Don't really advise it, but if you did do CCTV stuff, if you had your videos available either in-house through a drive or online, and you uploaded them and they were in regular readable form. Now, a lot of these CCTV products do their own custom compression, and you can really only view their stuff through their viewers, so it may not work. But you can, in Enlighten, if it's available on the web, you can stick it in the tooltip. Over here, we're getting a little more fancy in the middle. This one has some HTML bolds, etc., but a lot of hyperlinks. Very powerful stuff. So it means on any given asset, you could load up everything about, in this case, the building, or the schedule, or the archives, or the floor plans, etc. Once again, it's just a hyperlink. Put whatever you like in there. Here's an example. This is actually a full-on HTML table where they've padded it, got in the rows here, and put in hyperlinks. Also, the colors per what they've done here is because it's on a campus and they have, 14 different utilities. They put in the header of the tooltip, they'll put a color according to what kind of asset it is. So natural gas has kind of got a yellowish color, and the storms and sewers are greenish, and so it goes. They put a different header in it and then put hyperlinks on it. So for the point features, for the line features, you just get this. For the point features, there's actually then got the photos and a few more drill downs right down to be able to get, if you click by equipment number, it means the equipment number of that. We actually have the projects that's referenced to, and these are calling the document management system. So just some information there. So that's it. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them to us at OpenSpatial. Two main websites, openspatial.com. And as I said in the beginning, make sure you're signed up there as a member. If you are a technical point of contact, you can download software from there. But if you're a member, we are starting to use that more and more for blogs and case studies and that sort of stuff. So it'll keep you up to speed as to what's going on. And we typically only do one thing a month or so at the moment. And then there's as constructed
toolkit.com. So that's it for now, and we'll like to see you 2 weeks from now. Come and watch how we use the mobile application, how you can configure it, how you can sync, how you can fix errors or find inconsistencies, and also the reporting on that. Once it's field sync, like we do with lineage, you can see like how many changes have been done in the last month. And it's interesting when you send out mobile apps because you want to know who's changed what and what they've changed, and look at even where they've been. So there's useful stuff there. Good. Thank you very much.